Welcome to Mpowered Living. I'm Sheu. On this podcast, innovative leaders and visionary experts share insights and practical tools for work, family, and marriage. Each episode, we'll explore how to elevate your life while staying grounded in what truly matters to you. You're working hard to navigate relationships, build a thriving family, and create a legacy of purpose. We're here to help you do that with confidence and intentionality. So if you're ready to live a life by design, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Mpowered Living. I'm your host, Sheu, and today's conversation is for every person who might look confident on the outside, but is quietly wondering on the inside if they're getting it right. My guest today is Lisa Seay. She has spent years coaching leaders through some of their most honest, unfiltered moments. The imposter syndrome, the burnout, the frustration with their teams, the quiet questioning of, is this really what I want to be doing? In this episode, we talk about why so many capable leaders avoid the very conversations that would change everything, what it really means to build trust with a team, and how easy it is to slowly drift away from your own agency without even realizing it. If you've ever felt stuck, stretched thin, or unsure what your next chapter should look like, this one might hit closer to home than you expect. Let's dive in. Lisa, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited as well.
All right, let's dive in. So I know that you have had a front row seat to some of the most honest moments in leaders' lives. In your years of working with them as an executive coach, what is some of the biggest surprises that you've seen in your experience?
Gosh, thank you for the opportunity to think about that and talk about some of those moments. I think at the end of the day, one of the things I've realized is that leaders are people too. And they have the same experiences that the rest of us have, although many times they're played out on a little bit larger stage. And so I think that the experience of being a new leader and being unsure in terms of how to approach the role, how to connect with the team, how to set the strategy. All of those things happen. And particularly people new in their position or new to leadership carry a lot of almost imposter syndrome in terms of what am I doing here? How did I get here? Can I really do this job? And yet they have to portray something different to their team. So I've experienced that myself. So I know what it feels like. And I have a passion really for kind of the mid level leader in today's corporate world, especially where perhaps have not been prepared for the role that they're taking on. And they're not sure how to have conversations with teammates. I've heard leaders say that they don't know what motivates their team. They don't know how far they can go with setting expectations for the team. They're not sure how much to let the team know about them, personally or professionally. Just kind of being human with their team sometimes is an issue.
Yeah, that's so good. So let's dive into some of those things. What are the answers to those questions? How much do you let yourself, how much do you let your team know about yourself? Let's start with that one.
Yeah. One of the experiences I had once was a new leader assimilation. And it was an opportunity I was new in my role as a leader. I had a pretty large team, and I had the opportunity to go through this exercise where I was outside the room. The team was asked questions by a facilitator about me. What would we like Lisa to know about us? Or what is Lisa's background? Just different things that the team wanted to know about me. And then I had the opportunity to look at their questions and look at their thoughts. They also had an opportunity to say, what do we want her to know about us? And to share those things. And then I was brought into kind of the discussion with some of their questions, with some of the things that they wanted highlighted. And it really gave all of us this opportunity to be vulnerable. And I just remember sharing some things, even about my upbringing, about being an oldest child, some of the ways it drove me, some of my life experiences that they probably would have never known had we not had that opportunity. So I've always appreciated that somewhat structured approach to helping new leaders assimilate. It can be a little nerve wracking for people because you leave the room, the team is talking about things, you're not there. But then this opportunity to have this really open, vulnerable conversation it can be very powerful. So that's not always possible for people. Maybe people don't know that that type of activity exists or they don't have someone to facilitate it for them. So I think just taking the time to get really curious about your team, thinking ahead about the types of questions that you can ask them and the things you want to share with them, and not just jumping right into the job itself, like really taking the time to build some trust with the people that you'll be leading.
Yeah. That's so good because I coach leadership teams as well. And in our annual planning session, one of the things that we do is a team health exercise. And it is really focused on, we call it personal histories exercise, but
Mm.
really focused on like peeling back the layers of who you are and why you are wired the way you are. We talk about like first job, worst job, where are you in your birth order? How did that affect you growing up?
Yes.
And it's amazing how having that understanding of each other really helps teams bond and trust each other more because they can see how, why you are showing up the way you are. It's because, oh, you're the oldest child, or because that, this thing happened to you when you were a kid and it, you had to, you're hardwired differently now because of that.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it is that prevents us from sharing those types of things with people just in the course of our work together, except that the nature of how we work together has changed in terms of a lot of hybrid opportunities. And while that's great on a number of levels, it does prevent stopping by in the break room and asking a question, getting a conversation going. But I agree. I'm continually surprised by the number of teams and just the number of teams who really don't know each other very well. I worked with a team recently that commented on a really productive exercise that they had had. It was a panel discussion with some of their leaders. And during that discussion, they got to learn more about how they got started in the industry, some of the challenges that they had faced. And the value that people took away from that was so incredible for such a simple activity. Put some people together, ask them some questions, let them respond. And it was some people's favorite activity of the year because they felt like they got to know their leaders on a different level. So I would really encourage leaders to not underestimate the value in building a personal connection. I think people shy away from it, thinking that it's going to put them in a point in a place of less power, maybe, or leverage or something. But in my experience, there's always more to be gained with that vulnerability. And vulnerability is really the basis of trust, and trust is the foundation of great teams. And
Yeah.
so I think people underestimate what it takes to build some trust, and that it's not just by doing good work or showing up consistently. There's lots of other factors that play into whether we're going to trust each other.
So let's talk about the leaders that you're coaching. What is a common pattern that you see showing up over and over and over again?
So I think one of the things that that comes to mind is the idea that as people become more self aware and they get to know themselves more deeply, they develop a different kind of confidence. And so I think in terms of a pattern or something that I see showing up, I have the good fortune, I think, of getting to work with people who have decided they want to engage with a coach because they want to deepen their awareness or solve a problem for themselves that they haven't been able to solve. And so, as simple as it sounds, a pattern is simply that they're willing to continue to improve. And I think that is an imperative. And when I talk with clients about, many times within a coaching conversation, I will just reflect on how proud I am of some of the people, of all the people that I work with that just sit in the unknowing. You know, they're willing to kind of do the work to figure things out. Things like, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. This is a common thing that I'm coaching people on, and I think the reason I fell into that type of coaching was that I was in the same place. I had spent my career in corporate HR and really enjoyed it. Felt like I had many ways to influence people, to learn myself, to be challenged, to learn a lot of different industries. But there came a point where I just felt like I wasn't having the impact anymore that I wanted to have or that I felt like I was capable of having. So I left that environment somewhat unsure about what I was going to do next and have been sorting that out and figuring it out since 2015 and made some steps forward, then a step back, and some steps forward, and I think that's the way our life goes. And so I'm able to really relate to people in a way that says it can be okay that you don't know midway through your career that you're in the right place.
Mhm.
You have been in the right place up until now, and now something is prompting you to ask a different question. And so, uh, many of the people that I'm working with are people saying, how do I take what I've done for this number of years and leverage it in a way that will be satisfying for the balance of my career? And sometimes it's a pivot, sometimes it's a large pivot, and other times it's just, a slight redirection. But I just think about some of the individuals and some of the changes that they've made. And that's the pattern that people continue to look for ways to maximize their life.
Yeah. So if somebody is coming to you and saying, "What do I do with the rest of my life?" Like I feel lost because I
Hmm.
bet a lot of our listeners can resonate with that idea, right? And so if somebody is feeling that, what is your advice on where they should start? What's the first thing that they should do?
I think they should stay curious about what's prompting that question or that comment about why do I feel lost? And I think that's what I enjoy so much about coaching is this opportunity to just be curious with people and to say what makes this important now, this question about or this why do you think you're noticing it now that you feel lost? What are the signs of that? Because lost can mean a lot of different things. And so I know that what lost means to one person is not the same as what lost means to another. So we spend time just on that. What's leading you to feel that way? What prompted you to have a call with me? And sometimes the answer is I've never really enjoyed what I've done, but I've continued to have opportunities in the current environment. So I've kept on, kept on, kept on until now I realize I'm X number of years into it and I'm still not enjoying it. So that's the realization. Or One time, one of my first clients I remember talking to he was at a place with his family where he wanted to be spending more time with his growing children, and he worked in the restaurant industry. So the demands on his time were primarily evenings and weekends, and he was missing a lot of activities with his children. And he was trying to figure out, how do I take this background in hospitality and service and turn it into something that won't require me to work on the weekends and at night. And as we continued to explore, I think his why was clear. Then we got into, what are the things that can translate from what you do today into something else? And as he talked about being a restaurant manager, and he talked about leading people, serving people, the importance of customer service, the importance of food and nourishment, things like that started to come out. Well, fast forward, he had this opportunity with the school district to manage a cafeteria, and it allowed him to be in on the same schedule as his kids. I don't think they were in the same school, but they were on the same schedule. And that was really great, except the best part about it was that when I talked to him about why that could be a great place for him to be, he said, food is the foundation of everything. Like, food is what giving kids a good meal during the day will allow them to go do what they need to do to be successful. And I see my part in that. And I just think that's when the whole thing clicked and made sense. And it was just one of the highlights of my coaching career, I think, because he took all this experience, translated it into something else that wasn't just a job, it still fulfilled his purpose. So, really meaningful, I think, when we can connect those things. And it just takes people being curious about why they are where they are and what they want
Mm,
instead, to then craft a way forward. And the people that struggle with this are the ones that say, I've been sending out a million resumes, I'm not getting any calls, or I've had interviews, but they're not going anywhere, and they want a quick fix. You know, do I need to
yeah.
change my resume? What am I doing wrong in interviews? And many times it's because they're not real clear on why they're doing what they're doing and what they're looking for. And all of that stuff comes through in an interview or in their resume.
Okay, that's so good. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about communication and having hard conversations because I think this is one of the areas that I see leaders struggle the most in is having open and honest conversations, giving feedback, receiving feedback. Why
Mhm.
is it that so many leaders struggle with hard conversation?
Oh, a number of reasons, I think. I've spent time with a lot of leaders over the past couple of years delivering a leadership development program. And we asked them this question, what makes it hard to have a direct conversation? So there's all kinds of reasons, like, I don't have time. They should know. They should
Mm,
know that this is their job. Why do I have to tell them? This comes up a lot of times generationally, when we have a very experienced workforce working with a very new
mhm.
workforce. Many times they are questioning, why do I have to explain to them why they have to come to work on time, or why they have to give me a status report about something, or um, so I think that there's any number of reasons and excuses we can come up with, and just a
Mhm.
fear of hurting someone's feelings, a fear of saying the wrong thing. Many times there is a culture in an organization where where it's really discouraged
Mm,
that people have conversations outside of having HR in the room, and that, speaking as someone who was in HR, having HR in the room really changes the tone.
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
conversation in a negative way, unfortunately. Um, and so I really that honestly was a prompting to do what I'm doing now is that I felt like leaders didn't feel empowered to have the conversations that they needed to be having. And I started to ask myself, and this is when I was in HR, why is that? Why are leaders coming to me asking me how to talk to their employee about the attendance policy? Or, why are they discussing a significant performance issue that they've not had one conversation
Mhm.
with the person about? And I realized that to some extent the organization, we, the HR team, had created this culture that they couldn't do those things without our support or our endorsement or our approval.
Mm.
So that's really what led me into coaching. I thought maybe I'm not asking the right questions. Maybe I'm just delivering the answers in a way that isn't serving these leaders. So I became educated in coaching, got certified, and took a different approach with leaders around first asking the question, have you had a conversation with this person? And I think that's the first thing that a leader should ask themselves. Okay, I'm frustrated with something. Have I spoken with them about it? Many times the answer is no. They should know, or they can tell I'm frustrated, or I've told them this isn't what I want. But really sitting down and explaining, here's what I need, here's the expectation, and then getting curious about what might be getting in that person's way. Because I think sometimes leaders think they've done the job by just delivering the information. But another question I've encouraged leaders to ask is, what are you taking away from this conversation, or what do you think we've talked about so far today? How are you hearing what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, if it's a hard conversation, particularly if it's performance related, the person listening to it is only hearing half of what you're saying.
Right.
They're nervous, they're concerned, not in a good place to listen and process what it is that they're being told.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, but these conversations, and I go back many times to something that Brene Brown said one time, and it's a simple phrase. She said, "Clear is kind."
Mhm.
And I had never thought about that myself. I've had my own problems being direct sometimes for fear of hurting someone's feelings, saying something wrong, not even being sure what it is that I'm trying to convey. I just know I'm frustrated with
Yeah.
something. So I think that statement of clear is kind is calls us as a leader to get clear on what it is we're trying to say. And there's a lot of ways to do that, and frameworks and different ways, but getting clear on the message so that we can deliver it. And in so doing, we are being kind because we're not penalizing people for things they don't know about. We're not denying them opportunities because of reasons we've never given them. And we give them an opportunity then to make a choice of what to do with the feedback.
I love Brene Brown so much.
Yes, so many good things, nuggets.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about building relationships because I think there is a fundamental difference between what most people think about as networking and actually truly building connections and relationships. So, can you talk a little bit about what actually gets in the way of building connections?
Yeah, I think um, relationship building is so vital to just a healthy career, a healthy personal life. And what gets in the way is our perception that we're using people,
Mm,
or that they wouldn't want to help us, or I don't want to waste somebody's time. I don't have time for any more people in my life.
Mhm.
I don't need that, all kinds of self talk that can go on because we're in a world where we can make connections quite easily in a one sided fashion. We can post something on our social media channels, we can get responses, likes, and we can feel like I'm in a relationship. I have all these followers or I have, all these connections on LinkedIn. And yet we're missing out on the value, in my view, that comes from just knowing people. David Brooks wrote this book called How to Really Know a Person. And it's just a really great book about the value of understanding another person. And I don't mean that to sound like it's some big complicated activity either, but I think we deny sometimes our need for other people and we can't see the um, the immediate gratification from it, and so we don't spend time on it. And I've just had so many stories over my career that where the value of people I've connected with has benefited me years down the road that I enjoy it, but in coaching people a lot of times, particularly around careers, when I encourage them to reach out to somebody or who could you talk to about this? Who might be able to help you better understand this career or that career? They fall short and they realize many times that they've compromised building relationships and connections with people because life has gotten busy. I haven't really had time to do that. I've been working, I've been raising a family. And, like I had one story. I was talking with my very first boss ever in college. After college, I had my first job, my first boss. We're still in touch. And she was back in the job market. And it was such a wonderful thing to have her connect with me as someone who had been my mentor and someone who I admired to for her then to come back to me and say, "Hey, I'm now in the job market and I know that you work with people who are transitioning in their careers and can we talk?" And we got to talking and she mentioned an organization she was interested in working for and why, and I said, "Oh, I think I know somebody there." And turns out he's the head of HR. So I said, "Did you know that so and so is there?" And she said, I used to work with him years ago at another company." So this whole moment of like, oh, we're all kind of interconnected.
Yeah.
And I love untangling the web of that. Like, how are we connected and how could we be? And then just knowing that it's through people that things get done. I That's probably one of my biggest frustrations as a coach is when clients rely on non-human ways to
Mhm.
do human things. Like, we want to find a job that's satisfying, but we don't want to talk to anybody about it.
Yeah. Um, so can you share with listeners how to ask for help? How and I mean like you are, trying to grow your network or grow your business or like what's the graceful non-salesy way to ask for help? Because
Mhm.
quite honestly, you sent me an email sharing about your program, and I loved it. I was like, now I know what Lisa needs help with. I can help with this. Like now it's like clear what
Yeah.
I could do to support you. But I think this is an area where I really struggle is giving people clear parameters on how they could help me. And so could you give us a little coaching on what's what's the way to do that in a way that doesn't feel because you sent me an email, it didn't come across salesy or needy or whatever head trash that I've got with
Uh-huh.
asking other people for help. So can you give us a little coaching on that?
Mm. Yeah, thanks for asking that because I think you did a lot of things well too. In our pre-conversations, you mentioned somebody that we both knew who expressed some curiosity about getting to know what I do. You made a connection to I might be able to share what you do with some of the people I work with. And it just felt very genuine. So I think curiosity is one of the foundations of building connections in a way that doesn't come across inauthentic. And so thinking about what am I really curious about with this person? And it may just be, I don't know anything about them, but somebody told me I should talk to them or something caught my eye genuinely on their LinkedIn profile or really thinking about what is behind the desire to meet this person. And so I'll work with clients a lot on crafting a LinkedIn message to people and it being not just, can we set up some time, but more so, you know, you're working for a company that I've found to be very interesting. I've done some research. I'd like to learn more about what it's like to work there. I'd love to understand how you got to your position there. Maybe something like, maybe you could share some things about the interview process or the hiring process there. So, trying to be specific about
Mhm.
something that is leading you to that person. I've had people contact me and say, I was just told by somebody that we should talk.
Yeah.
And that's enough. Sometimes that's just enough. But, I've had so many connections where I've thought, I don't know where this is going to go. How could this possibly be um, a good connection to have? One time somebody reached out to me from a past job and they said, I see what you're doing now. It's really fascinating. My daughter is studying what you're doing. Like she's studying HR and she's studying leadership development. Would you have an opportunity to talk with her? So I did. And as we got further in the conversation, she needed to do an internship. She didn't need to be paid. And I said, you could do the internship with me, and I got someone to work with that brought me a whole different perspective on life and careers from a student who's about to graduate from college, someone who was up to speed on technology that I wasn't up to speed on, just somebody else to work with because as a solopreneur, you're alone a lot.
Yeah.
And all of those things came because I responded to this person's message that said, could I talk with you about my daughter who's studying something? And he was not somebody I had really kept in touch with all that much. But I think being specific in the ask and being genuine about it will go a long way.
Okay, so specific and genuine. Got it.
And then I think you said, so how did maybe I respond in a way that didn't come across as salesy? And I think that's because we had established some of the connection before I
Yeah.
sent you that information. Like
Yeah.
you had invited me to a phone call, we'd had a discussion. I didn't just send you something out of the blue where you had not expressed any curiosity. Not to say that I couldn't do that, but
Yeah.
I would say context is everything.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of different programs and things that I do, as I'm sure you do and your listeners, but I didn't send you everything that I've done or could do. I sent you one thing that you had said you had clients that had a need.
Yeah.
And if I can help you solve a problem or help you be the person to them that brings them resources, then that's a win for both of us. So looking for the win for both people, I think
Mhm.
is also valuable. Sometimes the win is just people like to help other people if they can. And so you may think, well, what would she possibly gain by talking to me? And for me, it's just the idea that sometimes I get an opportunity to reflect on my own career and the things that I've learned because someone asked, I'd like to know how you got to where you are. And how many times a day do we don't think about those
Yeah.
things,
Yeah. Yeah.
but somebody gets curious and you get a chance to kind of think about it. It for me has been a renewal sometimes of why I'm doing what I'm doing because somebody got curious, they asked, and I got a chance to share it and I heard myself out loud. And then I thought, there is a reason I'm doing this, you know? And so never underestimate the value that the other person who you're asking for support, the value that they can gain by giving it to you.
Yeah. Love that. Okay, so I know that burnout is so real, especially in this day and age. So, what are some of the warning signs that you see when leaders are headed towards burnout, but they're still telling themselves, oh, I'm fine. It's okay. It's not the big deal. It's just this season. It'll get better. What are the warning signs that you have noticed?
So some of the warning signs are, I think, behaving in a way that doesn't feel aligned with who you are and your values. And there's an assessment that I give to clients that reveals what's called overextended behaviors. They're overused behaviors. One organization that I've worked with has spent quite a bit of time on those overextended behaviors. Like one of them made a comment, one of the participants in this program made a comment one time that they were living in the overextended. So, behaviors that can range from being argumentative or win at all costs or emotionally stretched or like being a fantasist where I can take my imagination and that's a good thing on a healthy day when I'm using that behavior properly, but then I might become somebody who's living kind of in a fantasy world
Mm.
about what's possible. And so what are the warning signs? I think each individual has to kind of notice that for themselves and understand themselves enough to know that they're working in and from that place of being overextended. Um, and I think what I hear from clients, a symptom is I just don't, you know, the desire to do this anymore. It's hard to get up and go and do this. I don't care about it as much.
Yeah.
Pretty common, like, types of symptoms, I guess. But when I started my business, actually, and I named it Element C, the reason is that C is, in the periodic table is carbon, and carbon is the foundation of all life.
Mm.
And what I was noticing is that people were responding to the elements of their life, the frustrations, the environment, things like their commute being horrible, or I'm not paid enough, or I have a toxic boss. And those elements were creating their experience of life, and they had lost touch with the idea that I am in charge of these things. And so I can be an agent of my own life. And the idea of self efficacy
Mm.
and agency, they'd lost touch with that. And so what I love to do is help people understand the elements that are driving them to live less of the life than they're capable of living, and how to take things back, take the control back of their own life and framing those things. So many times we just feel like they're outside influences that are burning us out when if we got very honest with ourselves, and I've had to do this myself and still do, that I'm the one accepting those circumstances.
Mhm.
I'm the one agreeing to work late or to um, miss a child's event because of I'm making those choices. And so there's this idea of like having a pattern interrupt. Like, how do we interrupt that pattern that many of us who are achievement oriented have become accustomed to? Like, I have to grind it out to succeed. And I think that's where coaching is valuable. I've had a coach, many coaches myself, and they can help us see things that we're doing that aren't serving the bigger goal that we have for ourselves and hold us accountable to what we want instead and do it in a way that's very supportive
Yeah.
because we all have those experiences. We all burn out. We all stress ourselves out. We have life things happen to us, and we're not really meant to do it alone.
Questions for you before we wrap up.
Okay.
Um, a trait that every great leader must develop eventually.
I'm going to go with self awareness. I have always said that that is the biggest barrier to success in leadership is or in life is that if you are not aware
Yeah.
and willing to look at yourself, you can't improve because you're not willing to accept what either how other people perceive you or what you're doing to yourself. So self-awareness.
Yeah. And what I love is like for our listeners, they are in the trenches. They are doing that work, right? They are trying as much as they can to grow their self awareness. But it's so fascinating to me how many people out there don't want to do the work. They don't want to, look in the mirror and see what's going on. It just is mind boggling to me how many people are
Yeah,
like, no, thanks, I don't want to do that. I'm like, I don't understand why. Why wouldn't you want to do it? Why wouldn't you want
I
to be your best
know. I know. I've had that experience myself, where I haven't wanted to do it, and
self?
so we do have to be ready.
Yeah.
We have to look at why don't I want to do it? And sometimes I just will say to myself, okay, you're being ridiculous. You need to do some work here and you don't want to do it. You're being stubborn.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to accept the consequences of that until you're ready. And it was funny recently. I have a friend who's also a coach, and we've known each other for years, but we happened to be talking about something and in terms of our businesses. And I said, I think I think I could really use some help. And he will help me as my friend all the time. But I said, what would it look like for you to coach me
Mhm.
for a couple of months or 6 months or so just to help me right size some things? And it just clicked like that one day where I had been saying, I know what I need to be doing. That's the problem. We know what
Yeah,
we need to be
yeah,
doing. It's the doing it,
yeah,
And so I'm kind of telling him, here's my plan. Here's what I'm doing. He's not necessarily giving me some great aha about something different I need to be doing. He's helping me figure out how to navigate all the things I have to do,
mhm,
how to cull out the most important,
mhm,
and maybe do things slightly differently than I have in the past, but it's not major
yeah,
overhauling of things. I think we're afraid of what we're going to hear if we engage a coach or we engage support. But many times, and I've done this with my clients, many times I'm just telling them all the things they're doing right
yeah.
already. And then we're tweaking a few other things that end up making a huge difference. So,
Okay, back to the rapid fire questions. What's a question that you ask your clients that never fails to unlock insight?
ooh, I like the question of what do you want instead? Because we are very prone to look at what we don't want, what we
Mhm,
don't like,
mhm,
what we don't have. And when I'm asked that question, it usually stops me in my tracks because to really consider and create what it is I do want is
mhm.
harder work than just saying what I don't want.
What's a pattern that you wish more leaders would notice earlier?
The pattern. I think maybe the pattern of not playing full out, like leaders who have teams of people who maybe are not living out their fullest potential out of some kind of not even fear, but just there's a hierarchy and I'm only supposed to do this much. I'm supposed to sit in meetings and not ask questions. I don't have as much experience as these other people, so I shouldn't say anything. And so, if a leader is not noticing that and letting their team play at less than their full potential,
Mhm.
I think it can lead to some very, I don't even want to say damaging results. It's just that the team will not meet its potential and will never fully realize what it's capable of because leaders allow kind of the same people to make the decisions. The
Right.
same, the executive team decides that. And so when we fail to listen to those around us and engage them in a way that they can share their opinions, I think that's when we thrive as teams.
Okay, last question here. Finish the sentence. Great leadership begins when
Great leadership begins when I look in the mirror.
of that. All right. So if our listeners have questions, they want to get in touch with you, they're curious about the coaching that you do, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'll provide you a link. I would love to have a discovery call with anyone who wants to chat about any of these topics. I view those calls as a place to really explore what's going on and determine if it makes sense to work together. There's nothing that I'm selling necessarily. And I also view it as building my connections. And so I would welcome time with anyone who wants to talk and just to discover what is holding them back and maybe what they want to do about it.
Love that. Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today. It's been an amazing conversation. I've learned so much from you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Anne.
Thanks for tuning in to Empowered Living. I hope today's conversation sparked some inspiration and gave you tools to live more intentionally in your family, work, and life. If you enjoyed our episode today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story or actionable takeaway. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them. Because living an intentional life is better when we do it together. Until next time, remember, the life you want doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice. Let's keep creating it one step at a time.